Lives. And we have Mr. Keki Daruwalla in conversation with Antara Dev Sen. He's been publishing poetry since 1970 when he came out with his first volume, Under Orion. He has now 11 poetry volumes, including collected poems and selected poems. And he also has 4 short story books. He also has full-length books such as For Pepper and Rice. It was one of the introductions to Goa that I got. He won the Commonwealth Poetry Prize Asia in 1987 for his book Landscapes. He was the chair of the jury for DSC Prize in 2014. Antara Dev Sen is founder editor of the Little Magazine, the independent journal of ideas and letters, the first Indian magazine to focus on contemporary South Asian literature and offer it in English translation. She is also a literary critic, translator, newspaper columnist and commentator on the media, politics and culture. She has edited several books including the TLM short stories from South Asia series. She is associated with other media, literary, educational, monetary organizations in India and abroad, and she lives in Delhi. Over to you.
You gave a wonderful keynote address yesterday. Everybody's talking about it.
Thanks. Nothing much I can say. But one has to work hard on a keynote address, let me say that.
Yeah, it's not a turnkey thing. Yeah. Should we start with your latest novel, Ancestral Affairs? Can we talk a bit about it? And I haven't read it yet, it's just come out.
I can imagine. It's hardly out.
Can you just tell us a little about it and maybe read for 3 minutes?
This novel was brewing within me for quite a while. And, everyone remembers, especially if you have moved during your childhood, school here, another school to in another town, and then college in some other place, you always hark back to one place which you associate with your childhood. My daughter, for instance, associates Srinagar. We had a huge house, Pare Manzil, and with 140 apple trees and saffron growing and pear trees. So she remembers that. I remember Junagadh. My father was the tutor and guardian to the prince, and we lived in the same palace. In fact, in a way, the prince lived with us. The first day my father went there were 20 servants sleeping in his bedroom, on the floor. So he said, out you go, the whole lot, That was a feudal Junagadh. And I then put a Parsi lawyer in the State Council, and how he advises the Nawab in 1947. And then there's he falls in love. I don't want to reveal the plot or talk about it. I think I have another session on the book launch, so I'll talk about it there. But this was my second novel, and the first had taken me about 5 or 7 years, but during that time I also came out with a poetry book, a short story book, but this was less, and then revised it 3 or 4 times, shortened it, and there it is.
Do you want to read a couple of pages or maybe one passage from it, or no? Okay, we want to read from it.
Is that audible? Are we audible?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Both?
You turned to writing novels very late in life. We primarily know you as a poet, but you have also been writing short stories for a very long time. So we know you as a poet and a short story writer. What made you choose this genre of novels? Did the publishing industry have anything to do with poetry? Doesn't sell. Short stories are difficult to package. Write a novel, it's easier to sell. Was that part of it?
2 or 3 things. I had started novels earlier, one on the mutiny when I was in Lucknow. I was in Lucknow for 3 years, and it was the right place to start a novel on the mutiny, the residency and all the rest. And thank God I never went ahead with them. They were very poorly written and good words here and there. I was all the time lost in words. Short stories, I started writing almost along with poetry. And my first book was bad because the stories were, disjointed. The short story became a sort of a contraption where you juggled and got two strands together. As far as poetry is concerned, a time comes when you think you have got jaded and you feel enough is enough. And if you go through the lives of poets all over, you see that by the time they are 50 or 60, they quit. So I also quit. Because even if the content is not the same, the style, you write half a poem and you suddenly find that, oh God, you are imitating a poem you have written earlier, in a way, the cadence. So I thought enough was enough as far as poetry was concerned. And fiction has its own charms, especially the longer fiction, because you become a sort of a god. I mean, you have life and death in your hands as far as your characters are concerned. But I didn't take to long fiction because of some megalomania. But the plot and how to plot, I think that interests me a lot. How you go about it. And I've just read Amitabh Ghosh's novel, and I must say, the end pleased me extremely, because all the three biggest villains, there are worse words than villains for all three of them, they come to the top and they triumph. I had some short stories in my first book where evil triumphed in the end, as it so often does. Evil and mediocrity and almost zero talent very often triumphs, especially in South Asia, especially in India, and I'm sure South Asia culture is the same. So I took to fiction, and it has considerable attraction for me, and I hope to start another novel.
Novel soon. Yesterday you talked about poetry and fiction in detail, where you differentiated between the roles of a poet and the role of a fiction writer somewhat. Elsewhere you have also talked about how fiction actually both mirrors and escapes reality. When right now you were talking about evil triumphing and you writing about that or wanting to write about that, would that be more mirroring reality, or would that be escaping from reality in a way that only a fiction writer can? Because you can twist facts, you can take basic facts and then twist it and make it somehow reach a higher plane, which evil in normal life does not.
As different genres, they have not only different roles, they have different abilities, if I may say so. And while poetry you can dig deep within, and there are great novelists who have done that. There's no denying the fact. Read Dostoevsky, and he's all the time going within himself. You see, all his characters are going deep within themselves. But fiction manages more with external reality in a way, while poetry half-half. You can't live in a glass bubble. All of us live in the world, and all of us live with the environment and the violence or the peace, whatever it is. And we write. But fiction also has the space for coming out with, dealing with important moral questions. In poetry, you can only talk of epics who have dealt with, an Inferno by Dante or Paradise Lost, or I'm talking about English or Vyasa's Mahabharata, and there must be so many other long, possibly in a long poem you can deal with that. I mean, I'm sure somebody decides to write a long poem on what happened in Bangladesh in 1971 or what happened there in 1975. Surely they can do it. And the same with poetry, our partition, but you will find, apart from Amrita Preetham's poem, one or two, there's no poetry on, not enough good poetry on the partition, while there are novels aplenty, though not very good novels. In English, of course, we have The Train to Pakistan, and in Hindi we have Tamas, and others also wrote Kitne Pakistan and all the rest, Kandeshwars. But partition needs better fiction and certainly better poetry.
You have also, talking about Amrita Preetham's poetry about partition, you have also mentioned that poetry that is a witness to certain situations like this loses relevance after a while because they become trapped in time. And so later on, they are not read anymore because the time has changed. While I agree to a large extent, I was wondering whether good poetry actually serves to rekindle our sense of history and remind us of the past, which is in our present and which colors the future. So can good poetry actually become irrelevant?
Sorry?
Can good poetry actually become irrelevant, you think?
Yes, why not? Really good poetry, I suppose, can. And poetry of witness is a tremendous phenomenon which has come up in the 20th century. Why didn't we have poetry of witness in the 19th or the 18th? Because we didn't have the kind of atrocities that the 20th century witnessed. The Gulag, the gas chambers, the atomic bombs, and the two terrible wars. The first war was absolutely horrible. So there you are. And poetry of witness came up, and people like Milosh gave it a language, and then Caroline Forge and all of them got into it. I think she was in El Salvador and witnessed a lot of problems. And she has a poem where a colonel says, I don't care for your human rights, and he uses the F word, and then he comes with a bag and pours it, and in the bag are human ears. And when the ears hear the colonel's voice, one or two start fluttering, She could have done more with that. It is quite a powerful poem. But poetry has to go beyond witness. The better poetry has to, somewhere or the other, Rilke or Eliot, these people have to rise above just the poetry of witness.
Yes, naturally, it has to go, it has to reach another dimension,
Yeah.
You, in your poem, Migration, you talk about memory, because we're talking about memory, you talk about memory as migration as well, which is interesting, especially because when we talk about migration, we normally think about time, and it's in space, not time. You talk about memory as migration in time. So that is something that you have also dealt with in your other, and I hope that you also bring it up here. I'm looking forward to it very much. Yes.
Memory and the past, the same, isn't it?
Not always. The
Not-
past is beyond memory.
The mind sees a lot of the past, so you come to believe what the past actually was, and it may, the past is, if I may say so, never the past. Things change, things change, even memory changes, everything is seen. I'm sure historians will say the same thing. I mean, today you have someone in the Nehru Memorial who will cast a totally different light on so many events in the 20th century. Already people are talking about other leaders who won freedom for us, and I was very happy to hear Ramchandra Kua yesterday when he said it has to be Gandhi eventually, and Savarkar and this and that. It's a different story. So memory can play tricks, history can play tricks, but we have to delve into the past for the simple reason that we can't delve into the future unless you are Antara Daruwalla rather than K.N. Daruwalla.
That's true. K.N. Daruwalla has also been an IPS officer all his life, and as somebody who has been, you've also been the RAW boss, you've been the boss of RAW
Yes.
at some point. How do you balance this sensitive poet who is extremely interested in the small delights of life and nature and love and all of that, with the work that a police officer or a RAW officer is expected to do?
I'm not sure. There are two sides or three sides. We don't have a single identity. Nobody has this, So I will have an identity of an Indian, of a Parsi, of someone who has lived in North India, of a cricketer. I spent half my early life playing cricket and doing hardly anything else. So, and then writing poetry or reading. And if you have a job, you do your job. People have been insurance agents and they've been very great poets. And we had Orwell, who was also in the police. So this question has been actually dogging me from the time I started publishing. And I can't really find a better answer to this than the fact that one does all these things. And there are various sides to every personality. And I shouldn't forget to say that my father loved literature. We had 3,000 or 4,000 books, the finest of those days in the 40s and the 50s, and that had a tremendous effect on us. And he was very good in elocution, so he would recite Shakespeare, he would recite even Walter Scott was a favorite of ours 50 years back or 60 years back. And one got into this kind of a stream. I think that is why some of my poems end in rhymes, because I love the rhyme. Though I'm fairly happy or easy with the verse.
You also have a sense of fun, and it's been a lot of your rhymes, a lot of your poetry which end in rhyme also has a delightful sense of fun. I wouldn't say they were always funny, but they could be sarcastic, they could be even cynical, but they have a very innocent sense of fun at the same time. And this innocence is also something I'm curious about. For an IPS officer, innocence is not what you expect in an IPS officer. But
Again, I really don't know why, but these days I'm writing doggerels now and then, because you become an activist and you march and you speak, but at the same time one has to be also objective, and one sees the scene as some kind of a tamasha, in a way, These days I'm writing doggerels.
Do you want to
I don't mind reading one. I was on this prime time, and prime time on the television is a pretty awful experience. Firstly, because you are not there in the studio, and I was there in my house, and half the things that the other guy said, I couldn't hear. Anyway, I have a sort of a doggerel on prime time, and it's called Prime Time. The rightist friends were on his right, while I was on his left. I'm talking of the anchor. The rightist guys, politicized, they had tremendous heft. They first attacked the anchor, this rightist vocal tribe. You are partial, you are prejudiced. There were further diatribes. The anchor blanched, though tried to show, was not a whit dismayed. But remembered Rajdeep Sardesai shoved through the exit gate. Bravura was his forte. A trumpet he would blow and thump the desk and cry out, the nation wants to know. The rightists turned against me. Loud bellowing swivel guns. Instead logic one had to face analogies and puns. They asked, why did you not protest in 1984 when 6 were burnt alive in streets by Congressmen galore? Why did Sehgal not return the prize and put Academy in a fix? I told them she had got the prize in 1986. They holler so you can't be heard. The anchor joins the fray. They shout at rational human beings. They shout down Shobha Dev. She was also in the same program. What happened in Hashimpura, etc. There. What happened in Hashimpura? Did you protest or snarl when 40 men were shot by cops and dumped in a canal? All this has happened. I gave them quite a smile polite. Said I never slammed. Truman on Hiroshima. Stalin on Mandelstam. I thought of speaking out, my dear. Thank God I did not say that I never lodged a protest when they flew Enola Gay, the plane in which the atomic bomb, for Hiroshima. Satire would have fallen flat, quite limp and ineffectual. They might have thought I was talking of some Yankee homosexual. I could have thrown my school bag at my headmaster's face. Though boy, how he would have caned me and expelled me in disgrace. I screamed when the written word was shot. That's worrying, let it be said. Goons ring your bell, you unlatch the door, they let you have the lead. But the Academy folks looked quite relaxed. They just smile and linger. Won't call for meeting, would be axed. They will not raise a finger. Then on the dot, all this was rot. Could this be a harbinger? Thank you.
Thank you. How easy is it to be an Indian writer in English? An Indian writer in English? Because there are all these questions about now, of course it's a different time.
I heard these, some of this in Dr. Sukrita Paul's session this morning.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it.
And people were talking about the shadow of other languages falling on Indian English writing. So, Indians writing in English, that should be the way we should spell it out. with me, I had no problem. When I write, no, the shadow, I know I can speak Punjabi, I can speak Urdu and Hindi or Hindustani, let's say, and Gujarati. But the shadow of these languages don't fall on me when I'm writing. Possibly when I'm speaking, that I would like to, insert a sentence in Urdu or in Hindi, but not when I'm writing. I find it pretty easy as far as I'm concerned to write it.
That is basically your first language, you would say, even though you have many other languages.
I should think so. It is, definitely. It has become. Formerly I was inarticulate and nervous about it. In school especially, I studied in the worst schools possible, shifting from place to place. But slowly gathered wits about me.
Have you ever tried writing in any other language? In Hindustani?
No,
or...
not really. Not really.
So just when you started as a child, you started writing in English. That was always...
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
I had 2 short stories, very small ones in papers, very righteous papers from Pune when I was 12 or 13, and they got published, but they were in English.
When you returned the Sahitya Academy Award, you were one of the earlier award Wapasi heroes. You mentioned that you expected the Sahitya Academy to speak up for writers. Is that something that you would also say about all the other institutions in India? Because or would you expect writers to have a very special role? Because there are scientists, there are people, before we have had rationalists for a long time, and rationalists have been attacked and killed also in India for a long time. But is it because Kalburgi was a writer that made it a very special case?
2 things. Firstly, people have to stand up for their own kind. I still remember some murals were destroyed. I think they were of Jatin Das, am I right?
Absolutely.
And the artists got together and voiced their feelings about it.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't writers voice their feelings about what was happening to, or what had happened to Kalburgi, Dhabolkar? Dhabolkar's daughter was sitting with me for about 2 hours during an awards function in the Rashtrapati Bhavan. That was the time we got our small little Padmas. And she talked about the police. She said, nothing will happen in my father's case, you watch and see. And for 2 hours we discussed the case. So this was very much in the back of my mind. And then I came back, I had gone to my daughter in America, and I was told about Kalburgi. So I came in mid-September. I wasn't here on 30th August when he was shot, etc. And we waited, and the academy did nothing. And this academy is of writers, and it's an autonomous academy. It's an autonomous body, though the funding comes from government, of course. But suppose the government takes away half your funding, it will hit the headlines in newspapers. So it's not that easy even for the government to do it. I'm not saying that the government would do it. There is no reason. And along with this, then you had the Dadri murder and those absurd statements by numerous top people, and they all belong to the government, unfortunately, if I may say so. And the MLA from Muzaffarnagar, he made a fool of himself. And I've been earlier in the National Commission for Minorities, where I've been through a lot of communal riots. I visited almost every important communal riot in those last 3 years.
Right, you went to, remember you were very shaken when you came back from Assam.
Sorry?
When you came back from Assam,
Yes.
you were quite shaken by what you had seen.
Yes,
Yeah.
I certainly was. There were 400,000 refugees in refugee camps. Now that's not a small number. 3 lakhs were Muslims and 1 lakh were the Bodos. And the Assam government had done precious little. And we told the Chief Minister that he had done precious little. And we put it down in our report. And I wrote my report in three days. The Jain Commission took 13 years to write about the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, you see. So it's not an easy job to do this in 3 days in driving rain and driving wind. I mean, it was like it was monsoons, August, and in Assam.
I know you and Saida Hamid, the two of you had gone. Yeah, absolutely fantastic job you did. Can we open it to the public? Because we just have 5 minutes left. If there are questions. Yes.
सर अभी जब हम एविल की बात कर रहे हैं कि एविल है जो should I ask in English?
Yes, please.
Sure. So we are talking about evil. That okay, that evil is creating issues. But thing is, what nowadays we are observing that good thing is also not that empowered by the good people. So now, what I feel, even the evil is doing some good things, so that people believe okay, evil is there, that exists, and now people started believing that evil is good. In case of some riots or any of the issues like IS or whatever you are quoting, that bad people are doing some good jobs, so that people believe okay, good and bad both are exist. Otherwise, people stop believing in bad things and evil. What is your
The
take?
question of morality.
Morality.
About morality. When if you only talk about evil being being victorious, then people would forget that you need good. That is basically what he's saying.
You see, it is only, say, 1 book in 100, isn't it? Or no film. Can you imagine a Bollywood film where the villain ends in triumph and the hero is dead or the hero is thrown out? You can't, they burn the cinema hall, you know. So, but once in a while there's no harm. And I think what Ghosh is doing, he is attacking imperialism. He is attacking the Opium War. He is attacking the British for transporting opium and forcing China to accept opium. So that's hence, as a metaphor, he shows the most evil 3 people in the novel Trump. Incidentally, I have something of the Opium War in my story about the ancestors.
This is a personal question to Keki. I haven't heard a lot of the discussion, but the last part where you spoke about driving through the rain and the wind, etc. What I feel is many times when there is somebody like you who has experienced in your professional career so much of India's history, and even what we get on television is just opinions, and that too of opinionated people. So if one was to get the feeling as a writer, I think if you convey that, the angst that you felt or the conditions under which, because we know nothing about the ordinary public, it's just one commission and another commission. But I think that will add a kind of gravitas to the present debate, because then we are dealing with experience, we are dealing with facts, and we are dealing with a kind of ethical experience. And I think that is very important, that it is not part of any public debate.
That's not a question.
No,
That's a comment, and I.
No, that's not a question. I
What
just
you were trying to say.
I said this is a personal request to you to write about it. Just to ensure that
Let's see.
it
Let's
all
see.
yes.
Let's see. Everyone can't be Ramchandra Kuwa, so you are different. One is a different man. Anyway, we'll see what we can do.
Can I ask you a literary question about your poetry and about your fiction? There's a view, and some early anthologists have expressed this. I remember one of them writing and calling your poems longueurs. Longueurs. Longeurs. I mean, he called it that. And what he meant was that your lines, are quite long, and that they read like mini stories, as compared to, say, your contemporaries like, say, Mahapatra. I was wondering whether all that is because you really had the making, you had back then, and you have now the makings of a fiction writer. Because if I think of what Mahapatra said, he could never write a successful short story. He tried and failed. But you have straddled both forms very well. So would you, did you get the question I'm asking, that your poems, they already had, they were sort of built-in short stories?
That is your question?
Yeah.
What is your question? What's your, okay.
I'll try to answer that. Sorry. I'll try to answer that if it's the right answer to your question or to your comment. There was a time when I wasn't sure because I was writing narrative poetry. Much of my earlier poetry was based on incidents I saw. I mean, exactly what Mr. Kopkar drew our attention to. You saw something and you wrote, I saw a sick man being carried on a plank, you see, or on a string bed to a hakim. And an entire poem came out, and I thought of famines and pestilence later. So that did happen. And at least in one or two cases, I changed the same thing from a poem to a short story. But my later poetry is not narrative poetry. And that particular phase has passed, if I may say so. I hope that answers your question to an extent. And the long line, yes, I was happy with the long line once, and now it has become shorter.
Okay, I think time's up. I think we need to wrap up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.